Okay, hello. Today I'm going to be making a recipe from the Big Book of Amazing Cakes from the Great British Baking Show. And I'm making the Spanish lemon meringue cake, which I've never made before. So hopefully this turns out okay. Alright, so step one is heat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I never do that at the beginning because it takes me so long to mix it up that it's heated for a long time before I need it and it wastes power. So I'm going to preheat the oven later. Next, Blitz graham crackers in the food processor. I don't have a food processor, so I'm using the blender. It seems to be working okay so far. Just have to finish it up. Okay, it's calling for 9 ounces of graham crackers, and I do not know how many of these equals 9 ounces, but I do know that 8 ounces is the same as a cup, and my blender has a marking here for 1 cup, so I still need a few more crackers. Shifting them around so that the unground up crackers are closer to the blade. Alright, it doesn't seem to be working as well when there's more crackers, so I'm going to take out the ground ones in a separate container. Have a food processor at home and it won't be this much trouble for you, but if you do have to use a blender like I'm doing, I learned just now that you need to do small batches. Don't try to do them all at once, and press the pulse button a couple of times if it's having trouble getting through it all. Alright, so I have almost a cup here. Yep. And now it's on the counter. I have a heaping cup and some on the counter that just spilled, so I'm going to say that that is 9 ounces because I know that 1 cup equals 8 ounces. Alright, now the recipe calls for also doing the blender with the graham cracker crumbs in your food processor, but I think that's going to completely gunk up the blender, so I'm just going to do it by hand. First you have to melt your butter. Okay, so it's calling for a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter, melted. A 1/2 cup is the same thing as 1 stick. If you ever forget that, you can just look on the package and it actually says 8 tablespoons, which each of these little marks is a tablespoon. 8 tablespoons equals a 1/2 cup. Okay. So we're going to put it in a bowl, which is microwave safe. Don't microwave it on high. You want to put it on about 50% power. If you don't know how to do that on your microwave, just ask someone in your house to help you, because it's different on all microwaves. So I'm going to put it in for 1 minute, but only 50% power. This is pretty well melted. It's just got a few little chunks in it, but I think if I stir it, they'll melt the rest of the way. Alright, I'm running a little low on bowls right now because I'm saving my good bowls for the eggs later. So I'm just going to mash the graham cracker crumbs and the butter together in this little frying pan. I think it will work better because it has a flat bottom, so it'll be easier to make sure it's all mashed evenly. Okay, sorry about the tricky camera angle before. This is better. Alright, so I'm going to mash the crumbs together with the butter. Mash it all the way. Alright, I think this is looking pretty even now. This recipe is calling for a springform pan, which is not this. A springform pan is a metal one with a flat bottom. It's round, and it has the bottom comes out separately from the sides. So a removable bottom cake pan, aka springform pan. I do not have one, so I'm using this glass Pyrex pan. So hopefully it works out okay. It needs to be greased and then lined with parchment paper. Okay, you could actually just take some butter and rub it around in there, but I actually like the olive oil method just because it's a little easier to spread around than squishing butter around in there. I just put a little bit in the bottom and I'm just going to rub it all around. Or of course, if you have the cooking spray that comes in a little spray can, you could just do that, but I don't have that. Okay, so it says grease the bottoms and the sides. That's done, and now we have to line the bottom and the sides with parchment paper. Okay, this is parchment paper. If you do not have this, I would just grease it really well. Do not substitute wax paper. I have a friend that did that once, and no, that's not code for me. It was actually my friend, not myself. She tried to use wax paper instead of parchment paper, and well, you know what happens when wax gets hot. It melted all over her oven. So definitely try to get some parchment paper. It's really good for baking. With a springform pan, because it has a flat bottom, you would normally just cut a round section for the bottom and then cut a strip to go around the sides, but since mine is sort of an odd shape, I'm just going to try to mush it in. Alright, and then I'm going to cut off the ends that stick up the most so that they won't catch on the top of the oven and start to burn. Okay, once you have it trimmed pretty well to fit your pan, that's not the greatest, but it'll do. Then you're going to squish and flatten your crumbs into the pan. Okay, and it says that you should use the back of a spoon to press it down firmly and evenly. Alright, this recipe calls for separated eggs. That means you have to separate the egg white from the egg yolk. And we're going to need 5 eggs. And we're working with the egg yolks first, and we're going to place them in a medium bowl and whisk in some other ingredients next. Okay, so here is a medium bowl. Here is another bowl that I'm going to store my egg whites in. Right, okay, so we need egg yolks. If you have a little tool called an egg separator, that can make it a lot easier for you. I do not have one, so I just use a large spoon. Let me see. Okay. Okay, I just tap it a little bit and then lift off the top like a little cap. Okay, the white is gonna start to come out right away. The white is the sticky, almost clear part. So I'm gonna pull that out and let it fall into this bowl. Then I'm gonna carefully tilt it and pour some more white out. Then carefully tip the yolk into this spoon. Hopefully it doesn't fall off. Alright, so now the yolk is separate from the white, and I'm going to put the yolk into my medium bowl for the next part of the recipe. And I'm going to compost these eggshells later. Alright, that's egg number 1. You can also, if you want to pour out that little bit of white that's still floating in the spoon, you could put your finger carefully and just tip it and pour the last little bit out. You have to be really careful not to break the egg yolk, otherwise you'll have yolk and white mixed together. For scrambled eggs or something, obviously that's not a problem, but for certain recipes like this where you need them separate, it would be a big problem, because if you get a little bit of yolk and white mixed together, it's not going to make the right chemical reaction for the next part of your recipe. If you were really afraid that you were going to mess up, you could actually have a third bowl, and you could put each egg white into that bowl after you've done each egg, and just use this bowl for cracking one at a time. That way if you mess up, you don't mess up your entire batch that you've just done. Okay, but I'm on the last one now. Alright. You should always wash your hands when you're done working with eggs because of salmonella. Alright, so now we're going to use a whisk to whisk in our condensed milk. And after that, we're going to slowly whisk in our lemon juice. And then we're going to pour all that mixture on top of our graham cracker base. Alright, so let's get our lemon juice ready first so it's ready ahead of time. Alright, I already washed the lemons beforehand. So a good way to pick a good lemon is to pick it up like this and hold it and see, does it feel heavy for its size or does it feel light for its size? And if you're not sure, just compare it to some other ones to get an idea. If it feels heavy for its size, that means it has more juice in it, so it's going to be a good lemon. I bought these in a big bag though, so but they all feel pretty heavy. Okay, then another good way to get started with juicing a lemon is to roll it on the counter first. That helps break up those little cells that you see inside of citrus fruits, which is going to help get the juices flowing before we cut them and squeeze them. Okay, I have a handy dandy lemon squeezer here. You can also just squeeze it with your hand. You don't have to have a special tool for squeezing the lemon. If you do just squeeze it with your hand, one trick that I like to do is, can you see there? This is a cheese grater, but it's also very useful for straining out your lemon seeds. If you don't have a colander or something where the holes are small enough to strain out a lemon seed, this is perfect for that. So if you want to do your juice by hand, let's see, we're going to need another dish for this. You can just squeeze it over top of your cheese grater, or if you have a colander or a strainer that has small holes, then use that. And then when the seeds come out, they fall in here and they don't get mixed in with your juice. Okay, and this can go in the compost later too. Alright, some of my juice doesn't want to go through. Alright, it went through. Okay, and then the seeds, they can go in the compost. Alright, or if you have something like this, you can just put the lemon on here and squeeze it like this. And strain the juice when you're all done with all the lemons. Okay, it's starting to get a little full, so I'm going to strain this batch. By the way, if you're cutting without a cutting board like I'm doing right now, make sure you don't cut quite all the way down or twist your fruit to get that last little bit. Don't cut straight down on the counter because you can damage your counter like that. Okay, some people like to make a huge mess and then clean up at the end, and other people like to clean up as they go. I'm the clean up as they go kind of person, so I'm going to put some of this stuff away. Okay, so we're going to whisk our egg yolks with our condensed milk. This is our condensed milk. Don't get it mixed up with evaporated milk. They're not the same thing. I really can't explain the exact difference to you, but you don't want to try to use one for the other in a recipe. I know that. Oh, and by the way, the recipe calls for 1 3/4 cups of this condensed milk. I'm not going to bother measuring that because based on the ounces, it says it's 14 ounces. 1 cup equals 8 ounces. So 14 ounces is the same thing as 1 3/4 cups. Or it's close enough. So we're going to go with this. I don't think I've actually bought this before. Alright, this is pretty well scraped out now. Okay, so a tablespoon, this is a tablespoon. If your spoons have a, they don't spell out the whole word, it's like a short version. Tablespoon is the one that says TBSP with a capital T, TBSP, that is tablespoon. If it just says with lowercase t, TSP, that is a teaspoon, so you don't want to get those mixed up. A teaspoon is much smaller. Alright, so I measure and then I use a knife to level it off. Okay, so that's 1. And we're going to beat some more. And beat some more. 3. And 4. I don't know if you can tell, but it is starting to get more glossy. There. You can see it's starting to look a little bit shiny. So I have 2 more tablespoons left to go. 5. It's glossy, it's shiny, and the patterns made by the mixer aren't immediately melting back away. They're staying, and when you lift up, it's pretty stiff. So I think we're just about there. Alright, I think that's ready. There's our meringue. It's not at the stiff peaks like it was before, but it's still pretty thick and glossy. Right. Alright, so now we're going to spoon it on top. Actually, I'm not going to tap them on the side of the bowl because I don't want to risk making the meringue settle and making the air bubbles come out of it. That would defeat the purpose of whipping it up all this time. So I'm just going to carefully scrape it off of the beaters. I mean, you could lick the beaters, but I'm not recommending it because this has raw eggs in it. So at your own risk, I guess. I don't want to waste any of it. Okay, that means the oven is ready. Alright, that's pretty good. I'm just going to trim the edges of this because I can see that now that the mix has settled in, there's still corners sticking up. And if there's corners sticking up, they're very likely to possibly catch on fire. So when you trim those all the way down, alright. That's better. I'm trying not to squish it, just kind of very carefully spread it toward the edges because I don't want to deflate it of all the nice meringue fluffiness. Don't worry, my hands are clean. I always wash my hands multiple times while cooking. And this makes sure you don't waste any. Alright. Alright, I think we might be almost done. Now I just have to get those graham crackers that I missed before for the top. And I'm washing my hands again because I was just touching something with raw eggs in it. And now I'm going to touch the graham crackers. Alright, there actually is some that were inside the very bottom of the blender that wouldn't come out, so let's see if this is enough. Yeah, that's enough. Good, I don't have to grind up more graham crackers. Alright, so we're going to bake it now for 25 minutes. Okay, right now the top rack is a little bit too close to the top, I think, so I'm just going to move it down a little bit. Okay, that seems to fit with room to spare. I'm going to keep an eye on it just in case the top starts to get too brown, but it should be okay. Alright. Alright, here is our cake. It's fresh out of the oven. Partway through the baking, I did move it down one more level in the oven because I thought that it was getting a little bit too brown on the top. I'm going to let it cool for a half hour in the pan and then transfer it to the refrigerator to continue cooling. Well, as you can see, this turned out really good, and I already had a slice. I'm very happy with how it turned out. The actual recipe calls for taking the cake out of the springform pan and peeling off the parchment paper. But since I did mine in a non-springform pan, I'm just cutting out a slice as I go, like you would for a pie. It makes it a little bit more difficult to get the slices out, but as you can see, I can still get the slice out really well. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you'd like to try more recipes like this, check out the Amazing Cakes book from the Great British Baking Show.